Good evening, everyone. Myself, Ashu Sharma. I welcome you all in series of SQLite. Today we will see comparison between SQLite and SQL. So let's start with this topic. Move to the next slide. Here we have some of these points which are very important to look these such differences between SQL and SQLite. The very first one is SQL is a structure query language which is used to query a relational database system, and it is written in C language. So it is wonderful to be have that C language deployment over here in order to write this SQL as a query language, which is high level query language, and it supports relational database system, mean to say it supports that row and table manner, that organization of records into system. Now, when we talk about the SQLite, SQLite is an embeddable relational database management system, which is written in ANSI C. So once we talk about the embeddable relational database system, there is a wonderful concept in which we can say these are the database management systems that are built or integrated into an application, effectively hiding or minimizing that interaction with the database by an applications and user. Structurally, an embedded database may be relational and it may be non-relational like NoSQL databases. So some of the examples of embedded database are Apache, Progress Open Edge, and HyperSQL database. So these are some of the examples of embedded database systems. Now the next point is SQL is a standard which specifies how a relational schema is created. Data is inserted or updated in the relations, transactions are started and stopped. But as I said you that in SQLite, it is wonderful that library that is also deployed in C. You can say SQLite is a file-based system. It is different from other SQL database because unlike most other SQL database, SQLite doesn't have a separate server process. So you can't say that there is an intermediate server. So it's a directly that connection with the data which is stored on the disk. So there is no involvement of that start and stop of things over there. So no configuration happen over there in SQLite. Next point is very important that main components of SQL are data definition language, data manipulation language, and embedded SQL and dynamic SQL. But in SQLite supports many features of SQL and has high performance and does not support stored procedure. It doesn't support that stored procedures altogether, and in terms of the performance, it's a high performance. So this is a wonderful, important characteristic in between SQL and SQLite. Now move to the next point. SQL is a structure query language which is used with database like MySQL, Oracle, MySQL Server, IBM, DB2. It is not a database itself. It is a structure query language when we talk about the advanced database management system. So optimization of the query results to make them execution faster. That case, we can say that SQL structure query language. So most of those queries written in SQL, which is at a high level, and then we convert by using some relational algebra or some sort of expression. So we convert that into low level format. So there is a most significant, you can say, advantage of having such query language format in order to just make that transformation from that high level language to the low level language using that relational algebra sorts of concepts. When we compare with the SQLite, it's a portable database resource. You have to get an extension of SQLite, and whatever the language you are programming into the access that database, you can access all of the desktop and mobile applications. So it's a portability of SQLite as a database resource. Next point is a conventional SQL database needs to be running as a service. like Oracle DB to connect to and to provide a lot of functionalities. So there is a, you can say that interconnection when we talk about the SQL database needs to be run as a service like Oracle DB. So for the connectivity and some provision of some other functionalities. Once we talk about the SQLite database system does not provide such functionalities. So there is a difference between the SQL and SQLite. SQL is a query language which is used by different SQL databases. It is not a database itself, it's a query language. SQLite is a database management system itself which uses SQL. So this is also very important point that SQL is a query language which is used by different SQL databases. It is not a database itself. And SQLite is a database management system itself uses SQL. So these are the points we may compare both of these SQL and SQLite together. Now come to the next slide. This is a wonderful diagram that traditional client-server architecture and the SQLite serverless architecture. So here are on client host various user applications having that DB client library, and then there is a network. Network is a key. Without network, you can't say that there will be a connectivity with some of the servers on the remote for the remote access. So it is important. And then we have a DB files. So in between that client host and when you interact with the database files, that server host, you require network as well as you require RDBMS server in between this. So here is the client server architecture. Client send the request towards server and server fetch the results from the database and finally that return back to the client. So this is the way that this traditional client server architecture deploy. And here is a network connectivity is very, very important. When we talk about the SQLite serverless architecture, so on the disk it is stored itself. So you have to just direct interact with that. You can say under the client host, there is no concept of that remote. You can say that server host is not there under the client host. You have to just store that SQLite on the disk and to fetch the data directly towards the towards that client for the user application. So this is that the difference. Here we require client host and server host along with this RDBMS server is connecting with this DB files, that storage point. Here we have this SQLite files and here is a direct connectivity with these user applications. So this is the way we can say that SQLite is a serverless architecture. But when we talk about in general, the traditional approach, so we require this client server architecture. So there is that intermediate server present within that database files as well as client host. So this is that important when we talk about the comparison in between these two different architecture. Now move to the next slide. Here are some of the applications of SQLite. Due to its small code, print and efficient uses of memory, it is popular choice for the database engine in cell phones, in PDAs, MP3 players, set-top boxes, and other electronic gadgets. The next point is it is used as an alternative for Open to write XML, which is generally having that user, you can say, user level text, JSON and CSV, or some proprietary format into disk files used by some of the applications. As it has no complications for configuration, there is no configuration, you can't have to, you will not be just expose upfront that for the start and stop type of thing. So configuration, there is no configuration in SQLite and easily store files into an ordinary disk. And so it can be used as a database for a small to medium sized website. Now it is faster and accessible through a wide variety of third-party tools. So it has a great application in different software platforms. So these are some of the points. If people ask you at the time of the quiz and Viva, you may give these are the application that dedicated to the SQLite. So this is for this session. Thank you very much being with me. If you like this video, please subscribe my channel and press the bell icon so you may get notification when I upload new videos. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.